Okay, I'm back in the garage. I got my pink shirt on, and it's time to do some more work on this thing. The issue with exhaust fumes in here while this thing's running, while trying to sort out some other problems, has become a big problem of its own. So I want to try and get the exhaust to blow out of the garage, and this is something I got to get done anyway. So I'm going to start working on the rest of the exhaust here. So I picked myself up a 2.5-inch stainless exhaust kit. I still had a couple U-shapes left over from when I did this setup up front. Grabbed a couple magnaflow mufflers. They're really not that expensive. Let's see if I can find the number on it. In case you're wondering which ones I used. 11226. Just a universal 2.5-inch muffler. You know, magnaflow doesn't really muffle a lot, but it gives it a good sound. Like you can see right through it. I'm using V-band clamps, so I've got 4 of those because if I ever have to take this thing apart, it's nicer to just V-bands come apart nice and easy, and you can pull stuff apart fairly quick. Bought myself a TIG welder. This one, it's only a DC, so I can't weld aluminum. They're a little bit more expensive if you want to go that route and to get an AC DC. So I just bought a DC, and I've got an argon bottle. I've been practicing. You know, this one was actually nice. It came with a pedal, which the cheaper ones, if you went on eBay, they don't come with a pedal. Most of them don't. They're like scratch start or whatever. So this is all so new to me, and definitely going to be a learning experience, but I feel this is the proper way to go because after doing all this and the way that came out, obviously a MIG welder with stainless wire is not the way to go. And I feel that with a TIG welder, I'll be able to clean a lot of this up. I'm going to try anyway because you can see all the little black spots where it's leaking. So I'm going to attempt to see if I can either fix it, or if I have leftover pipe from doing the exhaust, I may just end up redoing this. Cut this out, redo it with new pipe. But I'm going to get the rest of the exhaust put together first. I have been practicing a little bit, took some of my scrap pieces and tried. It didn't turn out too well because this is, you know, I'm trying to set the machine up, and I've learned this is all so new to me. I've never done this before. And doing a butt joint like I try to do here with such thin gauge stainless, I was having a hard time with it just kind of burning up. So I've been playing with the heat settings, playing with how quickly I feed the filler rod into it, and then I try to like a lap joint where one piece of exhaust is a little bit bigger than the other and it just slid over. But that was as far as I only did one quick little pass, and I stopped because my welding helmet that I've been using for like 15 years just doesn't seem to want to keep up. I kept getting flashes, and I was getting blinded. I couldn't see anything, no matter what I did with the settings. So I bought myself a new helmet, bought myself some TIG welding gloves, because I noticed it was hard with the big bulky welding gloves that the most common ones you see. It was kind of hard to feed the filler wire with something big and bulky like that on your hands. So I bought the thinner TIG gloves. Now I'm just going to end up I'm going to use my MIG welder to tack all this stuff together, and I'm not going to try and tack it with the TIG welder, not right now anyway. I'm just going to use the MIG. It's going to be quick and easy. Whether it's the correct thing to do, I doubt it, but that's what I'm doing. Okay, I got a little bit done. I'll show you what I've done so far. Driver's side, I've got my first V-band on. I've got a small extension coming down off the header, off my downpipe. I've got the one V-band, a 45, and then I'm trying to lay out how I'm going to do the rest of this. If you look from the side, you can see this pipe is going to sit too low. The way the exhaust used to be on this, if I roll under here, my transmission cross member's got this, it's got these humps where the exhaust is supposed to come through. So I'm bringing it through that. And then what I wanted to do, because the exhaust now has to turn and come up close to the drive shaft here, it's supposed to sit up in here so it doesn't hang low below the floor. It's from factory, it was up over here, up near the drive shaft. So I need to bring it back here, and here's my existing hanger from the old exhaust I had on here, and that's where the pipe was sitting, right there. So I got to get this to come over. So I thought it would have been neat to do like an X pipe or something right here underneath the drive shaft. But my problem I'm running into, and I'll show you in a second here. The problem I'm running into is the amount of 180s, 45s, 90s, the amount of bends that I have in this kit is I'm gonna run out. I'm not gonna be able to finish right out the back. So with the whole coronavirus, it's getting hard to get stuff shipped. And I've already gone online to see what it would take to get more 45s and 90s and stuff like that. And the fastest, even with Amazon Prime, the fastest I can get stuff is like about a month away. So I want to see how far I can stretch stuff like this. So as nice as the next pipe would be, I won't be able to do that because I won't have enough material. Because I was going to take my two 90s and slice off about a third of the pipe and weld them together, and that was going to be my X pipe, and that would have looked awesome. But I need these 90s for the back for once I come out of the muffler, but I don't want to waste those. So I was looking at what I can do with my U-shaped, because I've got 4 of these 180s. What I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to cut on the 45s. I've kind of marked the halfway point, the beginning of the bends, and I was able to determine that's a 45-degree mark, that's a 45-degree mark. I'm gonna cut it there, and now that'll give me a 90-degree elbow I can use later on, which is going to come in handy because I feel like I'm not going to have enough 90s. So I got my saw set up for a 45 as well. Hopefully you have a saw like this that you can cut pipe with, or a bandsaw. But the problem I ran into was when I set it up, the pipe would hit the adjuster here, the clamp, so I had to cut a little bit off. Right, there's the pieces. I had to cut the ends off just so it would sit in there flat. Just something I ran into. So now by cutting it up, I can get a lot more accomplished. I have a 90-degree bend that I can use later on, and it's a tight radius 90-degree bend. And with this, I can kind of do like an S bend, right? Like I can set them up like this, and I can space them further apart by putting a straight piece in between. But I can accomplish what I need to by the exhaust coming out and then having to get tighter in towards the drive shaft. So that way I was able to take one piece and do a lot more with it. So that would have been cool, but I won't be able to do that. I might, if I have leftover pieces, I might do an H pipe. I could drill into the side and connect the two sides. We'll see how much material I have left over. Just a word of advice, don't weld around the rag you just used to clean your stainless with. Whew. Oh, what a mess. All right, the fire was put out safely. Don't worry, I threw it outside. Ugh, stupid. Okay, progress report. I've got the passenger side done, and it takes a little bit of time to mirror them, to get them to be the same. But take your time, measure, measure, measure. And I've got it brought back, and I've got the mufflers in. And the mufflers were the hardest part to line up, but I found that using a level helped. Spacing them properly apart and stuff like that, getting the proper height. But a level definitely helped, as long as your car's sitting level anyway. But which mine is. But that's that. So I've run into an issue with my goal to run the exhaust up over the rear end. This car, I've been driving it for years with the exhaust dumping off just behind the mufflers in front of the rear axle. I've been wanting to get the exhaust run up and over and out the back so that hopefully I don't get any more exhaust. It's almost like the exhaust is swirling back up into the car, because every time you drive this car and you get out, you smell like the exhaust. And when you fire it up, the sound really resonates under the car. So good luck listening to the radio or anything, because it's really loud inside the car. And constantly kicking up dust because it dumped off and pouring it right at the ground. So I really wanted to get the exhaust out the back, but it's really tight for space. And I thought I was going to be able to do it this time, but let me show you the issues I've run into. So with the way this car is set up with the suspension, you've got these upper control arms, the purple ones up there, that go on a diagonal, and it doesn't leave you a lot of room to come up and over when the car sits as low as mine does. And I've been trying to figure out the best way to do this. I even put, you'll see here, I put a V-band on the back of the muffler. I've got a pie cut in there to bring it over, but I don't want to get the exhaust too close to the bag. And I feel like if I bring this over anymore, because right now I'm hitting that control arm up top. When I put this thing, when I drop the axle all the way down, that top arm hits. When I lift the axle up, right, because I've got my jack under there, if I lift the axle all the way up, I'm clear of everything. But as I go down, the axle goes back, and then up here, the axle was hitting the pipe coming down. And I don't have a lot of room to bring that pipe back anymore. It's about as far back towards the rear of the car as I can get, and the axle still hit it coming down. So, given I don't want to get any closer to the bag, and I'm already gone back as far as I can go back there, I don't have many options left, and I was gonna basically accept the fact that I'm gonna have to dump it off into the car again, just make some turn downs. But then I got thinking, if I got rid of this sway bar, which I was kind of hoping to run, this is the lowest the axle is going to be. This is when I've got the bag full of air and the car's lifted as high as it'll go. The axle, this is as far down as the axle is going to go. If I was to run the exhaust under the axle, and then just bring it back here by the fuel tank and then up by the frame again, if I just ditch the rear sway bar, I think I can achieve my exhaust exiting out the back of the car. To give you a bit of a side profile, you can see the muffler under there. The light's kind of shining on it, so it might be hard to see. So you can see the muffler. And if it came straight out and went basically right where that sway bar is, it's not going to hang out. I don't think I'm going to risk dragging it or anything, because it's not going to be much lower than the muffler. I have to dip it down a little bit, but not much, to come out and then out the back. So I've decided I'm going to remove the sway bar. I'm going to run the exhaust under the axle. And what's nice about it is removing the axle is actually very easy. Sorry, removing the sway bar, not removing the axle. Removing the sway bar is actually really easy. It's 4 bolts. You can zip it off pretty quick. And with the fact that I use V-band clamps on the back of the mufflers, to remove the tailpipes would be pretty quick. So basically, I'm going to be running this car with 2 different trim levels. When I want to do just driving around the streets, sway bar off, which a lot of these cars didn't have sway bars anyway, so to not have a sway bar on the streets isn't a big deal. But I want the tailpipes. So I can leave the tailpipes on, sway bar off, drive it on the streets. When I go to the track, 2 minutes I can have the tailpipes off and throw that sway bar back in. And I think that's gonna be my compromise, so I can have the best of both worlds. And whatever I'm doing at the time, I'm really not sacrificing much. Because if I'm at the track, sway bar in, who cares if I got tailpipes? Just, you know, who cares? But on the street, I don't like to smell like exhaust all the time. And this thing, I'm fully expecting to be able to spit flames. And I'd rather do that out the back of the car than under the car. And yeah, so that's what I've decided I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna just zip that sway bar out now and get fitting the pipe and run it out the back. When you don't do this kind of work every day, it definitely takes a little longer to figure out how to get it done. But I got this side done. And as you can see, it doesn't really hang. It doesn't hang any lower than the diff. The diff and the shock mount's lower. But as this all goes up, which I'll jack it up in a second, you can see like it doesn't. This thing doesn't even hang lower than the frame does. And I kept a little bit of space between the axle and the exhaust. Just so, like these bags aren't inflated yet, they're just hanging. So once I put some air to the bags, this axle will actually push down a little bit further. But I never ride with it at that maximum ride height anyway. So it should be all right. But I'm just gonna jack this up and then you can kind of see it better how much it hangs down. Okay, I just jacked it up. So you can kind of see how low it hangs now. But from the rear, I don't think it's gonna look bad at all. And there's nothing to say I can't just take these off if I don't like them. But yeah, you can see like when this thing's all the way up, yeah, I don't have much room to go up and over. It's pretty tight up there. So this was the next best option, I feel anyway. So I've never seen an exhaust run under a rear axle before, and maybe there's reasons for that. I don't think I'm gonna have an issue with doing that because I kept it fairly tight. But we won't know until we put this car on the ground, and we'll see just how low it goes, because it could be the first thing that touches. This car used to be able to lay front cross member, but now I've changed a lot with the suspension, and I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. I've even changed a lot with the rear suspension, so again, I'm not sure how low this car sits now. But I am pumped that I will now have an exhaust out the back and, you know, a little bit of pipe sticking out. If this thing does shoot flames, which I don't know if it will, but I'm hoping it will. I hope I don't roast my bumper. It's fiberglass, so heat could kill it, but we'll find out. But that's it for tonight because it's getting late. As you can see, it's getting dark out, and you spend all day in the garage. Sometimes you just had enough of this. Okay, it's day 2, and I got the pipe on the passenger side finished up, and I'll just drop down and show you. So I got it run the same way as the driver's side. It goes under the rear axle, ties in behind the muffler there with a V-band clamp, and right now I just have jack stands holding it up in the back, because I'm still waiting on my rubber hangers to come in. This COVID crisis has slowed everything down, including shipping, so everything takes a long time to get. And with the shipping of everything being slowed down, it has kind of slowed me down a little bit, but it doesn't mean I'm not doing anything. I pulled the driver's side manifold back off, the one I had first started with, because it looked like garbage. And I'll admit it sucked. I used a MIG welder with stainless wire and it didn't work out very well for me. So now that I have a TIG welder and I have been practicing, I pulled that manifold off. I had some pieces left over from doing the exhaust underneath. So I cut up some pieces and I'll show you how I fixed the driver's side. So if you remember, the driver's side looked a lot like this guy did. Like, just crappy welds. This wasn't as bad, but still pretty rough. That side, that was this side. I had ground it all down, but then I feared that this area might be thin. I might have taken too much material off. And because I didn't get great welds going with it, it's just a matter of time before it breaks. And look at those crappy welds. So I cut it all off, cleaned it all up, and using my new, I bought an Everlast TIG welder. It turned out much better. Pros are going to look at this and say, you still got a lot of work to do, which, you know, I'm only going to get better. I was actually stacking dimes there. Yay. And these welds, like, I don't care what you say, that is way better than it was. And I'm doing this all with a single regulator. I'm not a pro. I don't know everything about TIG welding. I'm learning every day. And but everything I've been told is if you're welding stainless, you got to back purge it. So what I ended up doing was my line that ran to the back of the welder, I put a T in it. So this is kind of ghetto. And I put a little valve, a little shut-off valve. And this is the hose that I'll shove in. So like when I welded that, you know, I stuck a hose in like that. Stuffed, like covered it up with tin foil, covered up all my holes, plugged all my holes with tin foil, and cracked it so I could hear it. Right? If I turn this on. Now, I know there's no way to really tell how much I'm flowing through it, but if I can hear it in there, I know it's doing more than nothing at all. So if you're a professional welder, you don't have to be messaging me, chewing me out about my ghetto setup I got going on. I know it's ghetto. But it's the best I can do under the circumstances, because to get a dual regulator, I found them on like Amazon and stuff, but it would take 2 months to get it, and it's coming from China. Good luck with that. So this was the best I could do, and when I looked at my welds on the inside, they looked good. There was none of that sugaring or whatever you want to call it. So I mean, I'll pump more argon in than I need to, I guess. Might be wasteful, but I'm learning and it's getting better. All right, I finished the manifold. I didn't bother videoing it because it takes a long time to video stuff and get work done at the same time. But I drilled the hole out, and the hole ended up drilling a little bit bigger because with it being an 1.5 inch pipe for the wastegate, when I used my 1.5 inch hole saw, it's hard to get the exact, it'll chew the hole out a little bit bigger than you need. I should have used like the 1 3/8 bit that I had, but it would never have made it through the stainless. I bought a better quality hole saw, but it was 1.5 inch, and it was the only thing I had that could get through stainless. So I had to fill it in a little bit here. So the weld didn't look beautiful, but I know it's way stronger than what I had going on before. And in the end, all the welds turned out way nicer than its counterpart. If you look at this side, like it's pretty messy. So I gotta clean up this side yet. But I pulled off the downpipe, and these welds were done with the MIG, and they're pretty rough. I mean, that didn't turn out too bad, but I don't have a lot of faith in these welds. I don't think they're gonna hold up too well. So what I did was I ground the welds down, and I used the TIG welder and went back over it. Like I removed like 90% of the weld material that was there. And I'm back purging. I've got my hose run inside. And after grinding the weld off, I cleaned the inside of the pipe the best I could with like brake cleaner and a rag and stuff, and took a wire brush, ground the outside off, brake cleaned it. Tried to do the best I could. And I went back over it, and I mean, it doesn't look great. It's not show quality, but it looks way better than that. And that's going to be way stronger, I feel. So it's not the prettiest to do, but I feel it looks better than those welds. So I'm going to grind this one down. I'm going to grind these ones down. Re-hit those with the TIG. And then I'm going to come over here and start TIGging the new stuff that I put on for the rest of the pipe. I removed the rest of the exhaust as well. Right, this is the driver's side, passenger side sitting on the floor on the other side. And then I'm going to start hitting all these. And hopefully I have enough argon to do it all so I don't have to run out today and get more. So you can see how much I ground it down. Almost flush. I took as much out of the corners there as I could. It's hard to get it all, especially with stainless. It's so hard to grind, such a hard metal. Even around the bung there, there was a lot of weld on there. So I'm gonna use my tin foil, cap off all the ends, stick my argon hose in the end, and I'm gonna weld these up. Well, I don't care what any of you say, that is way better than it was. I know my welds aren't great. I had a little hole there I had to fill in. But all that looks way better than it did before. So I'm happy with that. I even got the bung re-welded as well. So now I'm just gonna go along. I'm just waiting for it to cool down a little bit because this thing's pretty hot. And I'm gonna start welding in all of my new joints. I'm gonna tackle all these pieces as well. And I'm not gonna film all that. You guys don't need, I'm not a professional. You don't need to see a non-professional weld. You just saw kind of a quick rundown of me doing that. But if you want to learn how to weld, go watch a welder. I'm not a welder. So I'm gonna go around, try and get everything here slammed together, and we'll put it back under the car, and hopefully it all fits well and didn't distort too much, because I hear that happens a lot with this kind of stuff. As you weld it, it'll kind of pull and bend and move. Hopefully my tacks stay true, but yeah, this is probably going to take me a couple hours because I'm not a pro and I need to have it sitting just right in order to be able to weld it. So yeah, I'll see you back in a couple hours. Couple hours, good grief, that took me it took me almost a week. That was a lot of welding, a lot of grinding, trying to fix my my botched welding job from earlier. I spent almost a week out here. Not all day, but the better part of a week. So I got everything welded together. It's all laid out on the floor. Looks way better than the MIG job. Like, my welds aren't amazing, but they're not terrible. I mean, some are better than others, but in the end, this will all be way stronger than the MIG job I did. And you'll notice how I kept all the flared ends. Like, I didn't cut them off. I used them wherever I could, thinking that it would make welding easier. It didn't. So, like, when I was doing my practice welds, I did like some lap joints, right? Like, basically one piece laying on top of another, weld it, and I was having more success welding that way. But when you use these bell ends, like these expanded ends like this, they don't fit super tight, and it actually would be raised up a bit. Like, there'd be a gap you have to try and fill. And I burned through a lot of filler rod, a lot of argon, burnt holes through stuff. And I found that the butt ended joints I had that fit nice and tight welded way quicker and easier. So if I can give you one word of advice, if you don't have to use those expanded joints, if the kit that you have doesn't fit tight, if you can afford to get rid of them, because they caused me more trouble than they did good. And I feel this would have been done a lot quicker if my joints were better. Cost-wise, everything you see on the floor here, minus my wastegate, it's bolted onto right now because this was my last joint I welded, so it's cooling down right now with that bolted to it, so it didn't distort. What you see laying on the floor here, the 2 mufflers, 1 stainless pipe kit. I had to buy a couple more V-bands, and 1 kit of pipe, like just one of those eBay stainless kits. I mean, this thing was like $200, and it was supposed to be like, it comes with a couple straight pieces, couple 90s, 45s, the 180s, like the U shapes. Was not enough to do all this. I had to buy, I had a couple straight lengths left over from the previous kit I bought when I did all this stuff. So I had to use that, and I still came up about 2 feet short. So I had to just shoot out to a local metal supplier and grab another piece of like 2 more feet of stainless just to finish it. But given all the pipe I had to buy, the mufflers and the V-bands, I was just over $500 for all this stainless. One other thing I didn't really factor in, to a certain degree, I knew I was going to go through argon. I went through 4 bottles. Like, it's not a big bottle, but this is like, I own this bottle. But I had to fill it 4 times. And at $85 a fill, I mean, that adds up, right? You're almost $300, like, you're almost $350 in argon. So this whole setup that I got going here, doing it myself, still cost me about $850, which was more than I thought it was going to be. There is a little bit of regret there. So if you don't have $850, and I bought a welder, I'm not factoring the cost of the welder I bought. I had to go and buy a welder. But if you already have a welder, expect it to cost you about $850 or so to do a setup like this. You can do this all out of mild steel. Like, you don't have to use stainless. And I'm sure if you did it out of mild steel, you could just use a regular MIG welder like I got over here, right? And in that sucker, I don't even run a bottle. I just use flux core wire for mild steel. And I'm sure you could blow this all together, mild steel. You don't have to worry about your $300 worth of argon, $350 worth of argon. And you could probably do this whole thing for half the cost. So live and learn. I've never done a stainless exhaust like this, and I really wanted to try it. Now that I've done it, I can say yeah, that costs a lot, and I spent a lot of time out here. But it's done now. I think it looks great. Hopefully it all fits together the way I mocked it up. Because as you're welding, a couple times I heard my tacks break. Like it's a loud bang, kind of startles you a bit. But I was able to like pull it back together and give another tack before it got too distorted. So hopefully I don't have to make any like relief cuts and bending stuff and welding it back together. But I won't know until I get it thrown in. But that's going to be it for today's video. That's what I did. It took a while, I'm sorry, but I have a life outside this garage I have to live as well. And it costs money to do this. So I can strike this off my list. I can get this stuff all put back on, and we're going to move on to, we're going to switch gears back to why this thing wasn't running 100%. I messaged Holly Performance. They got back to me with a few things to try, and once I get the exhaust on, we're going to try it, because then I can have all my exhaust blowing out of the garage and I won't be dying in here. But that's it for today, and we'll get this out this summer.